This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
Hey, what's happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. The gentleman I'm about to bring on, he has a ton of knowledge, a ton of energy. He has some big goals, and I can't wait to hear about him. Michael Unbroken is an entrepreneur, best-selling author, international speaker, coach, and advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. There's a lot more than just that, but brother, that's a lot in itself. How you doing?
Man, I'm so good, brother. I'm very, very excited to be here with you today.
Well, I'm excited to have you because I was on your show. You are a great host, and I can imagine what a good guest you're going to be. Why? I guess I'm going to start with, tell me about the advocate for adult survivors of childhood trauma. Why is that so important to you? What is that driving force for you, brother?
Yeah, well, it's my life, man. It's my story. And ultimately, I came across a passage in a book one time. And I can't remember what book it was to this day. It drives me crazy. And basically they said, when you're at your lowest, go and serve, go be of value to other people. And that was me at 27, 28 years old after, a lifetime of playing the victim and stuffing things down and hiding from the truth. And ultimately, Jay, I'm like, I never signed up for this. I didn't want this job. I don't want it now. But like, somebody has to. We can't keep sitting here in this world pretending like we're not all impacted by our past, and it's dangerous. And so to be a leader in this space while simultaneously incredibly difficult feels like what I'm supposed to be doing.
And it's a big journey that you're on, because obviously there's a lot of folks that have been affected, some positive, but certainly there's a lot of trauma out there. What was it? You said 27 where you hit your low, but what was that trigger? Was it that passage in the book? Was it a life altering moment? What got you to say enough of being a victim? I'm going to take responsibility for my life and for the life I'm going to lead.
Yeah, well, why don't I give you the elevator pitch version, and that'll kind of give you the answer to that question in a very succinct way. So when I was 4 years old, my mother, who was a drug addict and alcoholic, she actually cut off my right index finger. And that kind of gives you baseline, right? She was a victim of trauma in the same way that I was, and her parents before her. She married my stepfather, who was super abusive when I was 6. I mean, he would kick the shit out of me, and he put me and my brothers in the hospital, like the whole nine, man. And I spent the majority of my childhood homeless and deeply in poverty. In fact, I lived with 30 different families as a kid. And we were always getting evicted, our power turned off, lights turned off, water turned off. And by the time that I was 12 years old, my grandmother adopted me. And you think that'd be like heaven sent, but I'm biracial, black and white. My grandmother's a super racist ass old white lady from a town in Tennessee you never heard of. So, insert identity crisis. And I got high for the first time when I was 12, drunk at 13. And by 15, I was expelled from school for selling drugs. And I found myself, robbing houses and stealing cars and hurting people and running with guns and running from the cops and all of those things. And luckily I got put into a last chance program at high school. Still did not graduate high school on time. They handed me the diploma and they're like, dude, you just got to get the hell out of here. Like, the guy literally was like, I'm just going to pass you. We're done with you. And I found myself in this position of like, well, what's the solution for poverty? What's the solution for pain and suffering and homelessness and abuse? And JM, I thought it was money, man. I was like, that's the thing, right? It's gotta be. And so I made a declaration to myself. I was like, I want to make $100,000 a year legally by the time that I'm 21. And the legal part was super important because as of today, my 3 childhood best friends have been murdered. I was on my way there. I got family in prison for life. I've been in handcuffs. Like, I knew where I was going. And so I just started learning skills and I started getting better at navigating corporate environments. And by the time I was 21 years old, I was working for a Fortune 10 company, no high school diploma, no college education, started making 6 figures. And then my life became a disaster. And I found myself here now, 25 years old, 26 years old. I'm 350 pounds, smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day, drinking myself to sleep, cheating on my girlfriend, And that's when I attempted suicide.
Mm.
I was done. I was like, I thought money was supposed to solve this. And what I recognized was it wasn't money that was solution. It was me doing the work. And the next day I was in bed. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind, I'm 350 pounds. I'm eating chocolate cake, smoking a joint, and watching the CrossFit games. Like, brother, if that is not rock bottom, I don't know what is. And I got out of bed and I went into the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I'll never understand why I did that. But I remember being 8 years old and the water company came and turned our water off. And I went in the backyard, this blistering hot Indiana August summer day. And I grabbed this little blue bucket and I walked across the street to our neighbor's house and turned on their spigot. And for the first time in my life, I stole water. And I said, when I'm a grown-up, this won't be my life. Now, it wasn't financially, but it was in every other way because I was still that hurt, lost little boy. And in that moment, looking in the mirror, having that memory, going through that motion, looking at my body, being so fucking mad at myself, I couldn't think straight. I asked myself, what are you willing to do to have the life that you want to have? And the words, no excuses, just results, just started reverberating through my body. And JM, 11 years later, here I am talking to you. And so to answer your question, that was a lot of moments leading up to a breakdown that created massive change in my life. And the ultimate of all of it, if I were to simplify it in the most concise way, I was just tired of my own bullshit. I was tired of playing the victim. It was your fault, the neighbor's fault, the community's fault, the teacher's fault, Obama's fault. Like, bro, it was everybody's fault except Michael's fault. And then what I realized, like, you can't be culpable for the dark things that happened to you as a child. That's not on me. But every single moment from this moment forward is. I mean, even this morning I woke up, I was like, I kicked myself in the ass today. I said, get the fuck up, hit the journal, do the meditation, do the personal development, go to the gym, show up for JM's podcast on time. Because every day is still a mission to be better than I was yesterday.
Wow. The first thing that comes to my mind is you can never, and not that I try to ever, but how could you ever know anyone's full story? I didn't know that, right? And I think, thank God, to one degree, I didn't know all of what's happened, and I don't even know a skosh, right, of what you went through. But at the same time, that is so impactful, and I'm inspired. I really am. I can't picture you at 350. It's so hard, that alone, and then seeing this little boy being treated poorly, awful. But let me ask you this, because you have a topic and it's called How to Think Unbroken. The whole idea of unbroken, being whole, I guess, is how that in my head. Talk to me about, how do you think unbroken? How do you go from 350 miserable, like it sounds like, internally, to this man I see before me today, which is remarkable? It's somebody that's inspiring others. That is a hell of a journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And like, I don't want the weight to be the anchor in this. I think the weight is a byproduct of abuse, and you can go and measure that, and it makes a lot of sense when you look at a lot of research around it. The thing for me was, it was looking at my life through the scope of accountability. Like, you hear that word all the time, and JM, I never took accountability for anything, for the weight, for the smoking, for the drinking, for the having sex with strangers, for cheating on my girlfriend, for lying to people all the time. I never took accountability for that. And a lot of that stuff was self-soothing, and it was defensive mechanisms, and it was self-preservation and protection, and it was not recognizing the truth about trauma. The truth about trauma is that our identities are stolen from us as children, because you're not allowed to step into being you. Because every single time you do, there is a ramification, there is pain, there is suffering. The most dangerous thing that I could do as a kid was have an opinion, was be seen, was to use my voice. The best way for me to get thrown through a fucking wall, and I mean that literally, was to stand up for myself. And so you learn to turn those things off. You learn to not be you. And that serves you. Here's what's crazy about it. It serves you because it's protection. It becomes autonomic to not be you anymore, to bend to what everyone else needs so that you're safe. And then one day it doesn't serve you anymore. And so this place that I started to recognize and understand about my life was I'm destroying it. Every little single instance of not living true to who I am, I'm destroying myself. And that's what it started with. It was just really looking at and recognizing the truth. People call me an optimist all the time. I am not. I promise you I'm a realist, 100%. Here's what I know about reality. If someone before you has done it, you can do it too. And that's just what I started looking at, because as an entrepreneur and having run multiple successful businesses in my 20s and a couple that fucking crashed and burned, because that's how it goes. You know, I looked at what all these people were doing that had in common that I looked up to at the time. And they all were unapologetically themselves. And I was terrified to be me. I was terrified of my truth, of my reality, of my wants, needs, interests, values, boundaries, because I never was allowed to. The thing about healing and being unbroken is about this. It's very, very simple. It's about doing what you want to do because you want to do it, and not doing what you don't want to do because you don't want to do it, while staying in alignment with your moral character, your values, your boundaries, your wants, needs, and interests. And ultimately what happens is you start to form and shape yourself right now. And this is not to be crass using myself in the third person, but the Michael sitting in front of you is a realization of the idea of the person that I think I'm capable of being. And the truth is, I'm still fucking 40 years away from being the person I really believe I'm capable of being. So every single day I show up, and that's what it's about. It's about showing up. It's about living in your truth. It's about doing what you want to do. And I know that's going to sound really weird to people who have always kind of operated in this scope where they can show up in their lives and there's not the other side of it. But think about this for context. You're in third grade and you color the moon purple. And your teacher comes up to you. She goes, JM, that's not how you color the moon. Who do you think you are? And you're castrated in front of everyone. And for the rest of your life, that thing that you loved, coloring, being you, showing up, touching your authenticity, you put to the wayside because that singular moment was so embarrassing that you're terrified of it ever happening again. And that's what becoming unbroken is about. Recognizing that moment, saying, no, fuck that shit. I'm going to live my life. And then showing up for yourself every single day, especially when it's difficult.
So living in the truth, I absolutely, I can embrace that. I put myself in your shoes and I think all this pain, this fucking anger, the bullshit that happened to me as a kid, how do you not feel that? And instead of acting out on yourself, as it sounds like perhaps you did, right? Treated yourself poorly for things that were done to you. How do you let that go? If it's let go, I'm just curious because I didn't have all that happen to me, right? I didn't. So I'm very blessed in a way to not ever have to experience that. So it's hard for me to understand. What would you do? What do you do with that anger? Or is it just gone? Have you released it?
Yeah, well, for a long time, I had no emotions. You know, I was a emotional recluse. I thought I was a sociopath at one point. There's a 15-year span in my life where I didn't cry. It was literally beat out of me, right? You know, I grew up in a house where you cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And that just, man, that is one of the most dangerous and detrimental things I think a human being can go through, because you learn how to turn off. I mean, when my best friend got murdered, like nothing, not a tear. When my mom died, my grandma died, nothing. You know, 9/11, nothing. Like I literally was a robot. And I think about that all the time. And so anger started to show up when I was in, really always, I was always a violent kid. Always super violent. You know, that kid in elementary school where you're like, keep that kid away from my kids. I was that kid, because here's why. That's what I was experiencing at home. That's what I was seeing every day. The way that I thought we connected was I had to punch you in the face or stab you with a fork or whatever fucking crazy shit I did as a kid. And so when I was getting into this place of stepping deep into this journey, I was in a men's group therapy. I recommend it for all men, actually. Might change your life, certainly change mine. So about 6 years ago, I'm in this men's group therapy, and I'm sitting here, we're having this conversation, and one of the guys just calls me straight out. He goes, "You're good at anger, but you don't know how to be angry." And I was like, "I'm angry all the time. What are you talking about?" He goes, "No, you're not. You're good at breaking shit and throwing shit and screaming at people. You're good at like destroying everything around you, but but you don't have the emotion of anger." And I was like, whoa, that's really interesting. And I realized in that conversation, I didn't have any of I had no joy, no happiness, no compassion, no empathy, no love, no sadness. And so I had to literally learn how to be an emotional human being because I didn't know how. It was stripped out of me. And so, like, dude, over the next, really even now to today, I had, if you can't see it, but on my desk, I have 5 journals with 5 different colors, and they all mean something different. And the red one is my anger journal. And I put some dark ass shit in there, JM, because the truth is I needed to feel it. And then now, to get to the point to answering your question, how do I navigate that? Like, what do I do with that emotion right now? That shit fuels me, man. When I have those days where I don't want to show up, where I'm tired, where I recorded 6 podcasts in a day and started writing another book and was on an airplane and the whole 9, I go, if I don't do this, all those motherfuckers who said I wasn't going to be shit, they're going to win. Now, look, that's dark side energy. That's maybe 5% of how I operate in the world. But when I need it, it's there. The rest of the time, I'm operating through empathy. And I'm saying, how can I give people the thing that I needed? How can I give children what I needed? How can I show up better in my community, for the Unbroken Nation, for JM today, right? And that's so much about just being super cognizant of your feelings and your emotions and how you show up in the world.
I mean, it's pretty amazing to think I don't know exactly how old you are, but 6 years ago, you start this journey to develop that much empathy. That's amazing. The world could use a hell of a lot more of it. I'm just curious, obviously you can relate to people that have gone through really nasty things as a child. What is that first step, man? Somebody comes to you and they're like, "Yeah, man, I had some really bad stuff as a kid too." And your first step to them is what?
Well, I think the most important thing is always acknowledgement, right? And I'll tell you this, if somebody is already coming to me and they're like, "Hey, I had some bad things happen," they're miles ahead of a lot of people. Because like when I go look at my life, until I was 26 years old, I pretended none of that mattered. Like I look at my finger, man, it is discolored. It is broken. It is like curved weird. I don't have sensation. I've had like fucking 10 skin grafts on it. And I would look at this every single day and I'd be like, "Nope, that doesn't bother me." What in the fuck are you talking about? Right? I think acknowledgement is the most important thing. And it's difficult because in that you have to recognize the truth that bad things did happen. And again, it's coming back to it and looking at it and saying, because bad things don't happen doesn't make me a bad person. Doesn't mean I'm culpable for them. But here's the analogy I like to use. Childhood trauma is like having a house. And in your front yard, there's trash. And even though you didn't put that trash there, it's still your house. And that's the difficulty in this, is that you got to go through this process of cleaning up. So, whether it's for the first time or whatever, the number one thing I'm always looking for when I work with somebody like directly, and I only coach a handful of people one-on-one, but that's why I make the podcast and that's why I have groups and all that stuff. But like, are you willing? Like, are you for sure like 100% committed to changing your life? Because there's people who will come into programs, and this as well as anyone, where they'll be like, "Well, I did the program and my life didn't change." Well, your life didn't fucking change because you didn't change your life, right? And so the first thing that I'm looking for is like, I want you to convince me that you're ready for this. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the most important thing. Like, are you really ready? Because to be honest with you, even now I go, am I really ready for this? And I still go to the courses, and I still have a coach, and I still go to therapy, and I still read the books, and I still ask myself, am I really ready for this? So how committed are you? Because I've come to find the truth about this is, once you step into this and you sit down, you better buckle the fuck up, because this is a rest of your life thing. It ain't going to be done just because you read some books and went to Tony Robbins' course. You know what I'm saying? That's not disrespecting Tony. He's one of my mentors. I'm just saying people look at that and they go, oh man, I did the thing. My life didn't change. You got to do the thing every day. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. And if you're not willing to do that, nothing will be different.
Yeah, I guess my thought here is, when you see people that aren't willing, because what they're going to have to face, whether it's Tony's course, talking to someone that like yourself that can relate, going to the men's retreat that you've talked about, or that's not what you called it, but the men's thing.
Men's group.
Sorry, say that again.
Men's group therapy.
Thank you. Men's group therapy. Those that are unwilling to go face those fears, face that shit that happened to me, that really did happen. It's in there. And the only way to get through it is to face it. What would you say to somebody listening right now? Because this is one of the biggest challenges I have, when you know someone's hurting and you know their story, but they won't go through it. They can't relive it. I'm thinking of one of my best friends right now as I'm talking. What would you say to him so that he could maybe be willing to go face it? Because he's a beautiful being as is, but I can only imagine how amazing if he would face it.
Yeah. I mean, what am I going to say, man? You can lead the horse to water, right? Like the reality and the truth is, I would have people in my life frequently be like, dude, you need to work on this. You're hurting people. You're making these women in your life feel worthless. You're being despicable to your coworkers. Like, you're violent to your brothers. You need to work on this. I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Don't tell me how to live my life. You know what I'm saying? Like, you've got to be willing. It's got to come from you. And if you're not, fine, but you don't get to complain. You don't get to complain about why your life sucks, why you're unhappy. You don't get to complain, because if you're not going to put in the work, nothing's going to be different. My therapist told me something so important. It changed my life forever. I even wrote about it in my book, in one of the books. He told me change only happens when you make change happen. And if you're not wanting that, if you're not willing to have that, if you don't actually seek the change, it's not going to come. And so I think for those people who are like, I'm good with my life, so be it. I can't, in the same way you can't will me to do anything, I can't do that for anyone else. And of course I want people to live the best existence possible. And I want them to show up for themselves. And I want them to step into courage and face the reality. But some people feel a lot more safe by not doing that. And I can't disregard that. And it sucks. And I wish that weren't the case. But ultimately at the end of the day, it really is truly a person-to-person decision. And I wish there was a magic pill I could give people. I wish I go, hey, look at my life, how great it is. Like, I love my life, Jay. My life's fucking awesome, dude. But it wasn't for a long time. It wasn't for the majority of the time I've been alive, actually. 10% of my life I've really enjoyed, right? And so that doesn't mean that won't change in time, but I had to make a decision to change it. And I think ultimately that's where we start.
Yeah, I say with sales, like, hey, I can't want it more than you. That's kind of what I'm hearing when it comes to the healing. One of the things you talk about is, community connection and commitment. Why is that so important to healing, those 3 C's? Can you kind of break that down so people can understand, like, all right, I am willing to go face it. Maybe these are 3 of the things I really need to have.
Yep. 100%, man. Look at this. Name someone incredibly successful who did it by themselves.
No one.
Exactly. No one ever in history, because we're a communal species. That's how we work. Even the worst people needed a team. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that's fucked up to say, but it's true. Like, we're a community. And so the first thing I try to explain to people is, like, community is everything in this healing journey, because when you connect with other people, you recognize the truth of reality that you are not alone. And so many of us think we are. I thought I was alone, dude. I was like, nobody's going to get this. Nobody's going to listen to me. Nobody's going to believe me. No one's, and you know what? That carries weight. That keeps you from stepping into what's next. And so community becomes this really beautiful thing. I mean, that's why like support groups are so big. That's why entrepreneurial communities, when you find the right one, are so impactful, because you get to be a part of something and not feel alone. And honestly, like, look, you're not alone. You're choosing to be alone, right? This comes back to where we kind of started this conversation. You know, I made a declaration of myself to go be of service to other people when I was at my lowest, because that felt like the only way I could be me. And at the beginning, it was just writing blogs, right? It was just writing because I'm a writer first. And then all these years later, it's turned into what it is. And so, you know, even if you're just giving to your community to fill your cup by sharing your story, that's a great starting point. And connection is important in this too, because you can be in the wrong community. Make sure that you guys are connected on the right things, because if you're in the wrong community, you might as well not be there. And I've run into that as an entrepreneur a couple of times. I've run into that as a speaker, as an author, as a coach. Like, and then when you're in it, you go, oh shit, wait a second, this isn't for me. And you've got to realign. That's so important. Like I invested in one entrepreneurship community a significant amount of money. And then I went and I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is actually not even close to what I wanted. And so look, mistakes are going to happen, and that's fine. And you're going to, and I think the best thing about that is you'll learn. And just, it taught me, let me rephrase that. It reminded me how important it is to ask the right questions. And so connection is incredibly important. And then commitment's everything. Like, you're either in or you're not. Make a fucking decision. Like, show up or don't show up. Don't half-ass anything in life. You know, your goals, your ambitions, your dreams, what you want to have, you're going to have to do hard, difficult work. You're going to have to do things you don't want to do. You're going to have to show up in ways you don't want to show up. You're going to have to do things that drive you fucking crazy. You're going to have to do the minutia. You're going to have to do the day in and day out, the grind and the hustle, right? And that's not hustle mentality, work yourself to the bone, but hustle, like, get the fuck up and get it done. And then in that commitment, you're also committing to that community. What are you giving to them? You can't always be taking. Stop it. Bring value to people's life. You matter. Like, trust me, you know something I don't know that can make my life better. So stop holding it in, because you're being selfish.
Yeah, and clearly you're unselfish. As you were talking, one of the things.
No, I'm not. I'm very selfish.
Okay.
But like in the right way.
Okay. That's fair. And you know what? That's absolutely, you're selfish in that you take care of yourself so you can be you're so unselfish in telling your story, I guess, is what I mean to say. Sure. And my question is, because look, I believe our entire life is all about telling stories. I really do believe it's telling other people so that they can learn from it, hopefully get better. How do you pick and choose when writing the books, doing the blogs? Because you have so much that's happened. How do you choose, man? Does it just flow out? And this is not a philosophical thing. I'm just curious. How do you choose? Because that's hard, man. A lot of life has happened for you.
Yeah, I get it. You know, I look at, so context, JM, you know more about me in 5 minutes than people who knew me for 30 years. You know what I'm saying? And that's this much of my life. That's such a minuscule amount. And what I've come to realize and understand is, dude, some of my stories. So let me rewind. I wrote my first book. I've actually written 3 books. 2 of them are published. One of them, I don't know. And the first book was just a reflection of a collection of all the experiences of my life. And as I was writing it, I was like, I cannot share that. This is so, JM, it was literally a thought, was like, this is so dark. I can't share this with people because it doesn't need to be heard, and it doesn't need to be seen or read or consumed because it's so dark. I mean, shit, like, I think about it now and I go, that's like, horror movies aren't even as dark as some of the shit I've been exposed to in my life. And so it really just came down to me asking myself as a storyteller, what is the purpose of this story? Is there relatability? Is there connection in this? Because like, I think about this, if I came on and I was talking about being a NASA astronaut, nobody's going to relate to that. You know what I'm saying? And so it really became about relation, because some of those really dark stories, even the finger thing, like even that might be too far, right? Because I go, nobody's going to relate to it, but the rest they will. That's really, since we're talking about storytelling, honestly, dude, it's about shock value, because you're going to listen. You probably made it to this point in the podcast because you're like, whoa, that was fucking crazy. This guy's been through some shit. But I don't think that all of the things deserve to be said or spoken. Maybe not deserves the right word, or there's no need to. And so I'm very cognizant of what I put into the world. And I do that with purpose. I mean, it's the same reason on social media, I don't share my private life. That's not for you. That's for me. Right. And so I think you just got to get its clarity. I think that's the most important way to phrase this. You got to sit down and understand the purpose of every single thing that you put out. Because there's no reason for me to talk about what I just ate for lunch. You know what I'm saying? But there's also no reason for me to talk about things that are so incredibly dark that you might have to go to therapy.
That's fair. I got to go back to the selfish thing, because you said something and it's sticking in my craw here. And I love what you said, which is, no, dude, I'm actually very fucking selfish. Talk to the audience about that, because I coach on this a lot. And I love that you corrected me on it, because this is one of the biggest things I coach on, is to be selfish. So when you say that, brother, what does that mean? How can people hear that and say, I need more of being selfish in my life so I can show up in an unselfish manner or as my best self?
Yeah. Well, because I think it's so incredibly important to take care of yourself, because you can't be of service to your kids, to your community, to your partner, to your business, to anything if you're not first that for yourself. One of the first questions I ask myself in the morning is, what do I need today to show up for my community, for my world, for the unbroken nation, and for my service? What do I need? That's literally the first question. Not what do you need? I don't care what you need, because if I don't take care of me, how do I fulfill your need? And so in that, it's also recognizing, like, what does selfish mean? And for me, it means I'm not breaking my routine in the morning. I'm so dissociated because of all the trauma. I have to journal. I have to meditate. I have to work out and stretch my body and drink my water. Like, I have to do that for the first hour of my day. And then I have to do my personal development. And depending on the day, that might be 30 minutes. It might be an hour. So I have to dedicate those first 2 hours, no matter what, to myself. Period. I'm not interrupting those. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not checking email. I'm not texting you. None of that. And you hear that stuff all the time, but the reality is it's so practical. And also, being selfish is me looking at my life and going, I'm not going to bend who I am for you ever. I'm just not. That doesn't mean there's not space on the table for the conversation, because I think that there is, reciprocation in life. And on the occasion, you do have to kind of go to this place where you do things that you don't particularly want to do because they are for the betterment or for reaching the goal. But I'll give you a perfect example. JM, if you ask me right now, do you want to go see Kenny Chesney? I'd be like, fuck no, absolutely not. Not because of any other reason than I hate country music. And no offense to country music, or if you love it, that's not the point. The point is, there was a time where I used to go. And I would go and I would show up and I would be like, who am I right now? Why am I here? And that's the reality about being selfish, is staying in alignment with your moral character, your values. Start there. If you don't know your values, you need to figure that out. Who are you and what do you stand for? Because look, the reality is, if you're not filtering your life decisions through your moral value, through your values and your moral character, you're in trouble. You're already behind the 8 ball. And so I'm always asking myself, here's my values: honesty, kindness, leadership, self-actualization, and no excuses. Can I operate my life through those 5 values as close to humanly possible as possible? Because the truth is, like, we're always going to fuck up. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to lie. We're going to not be kind. We're going to not be a leader. That we're not going to actually live who we are. That's going to happen. Can you course correct and get back to it and make the time in which you're not doing that shorter and shorter and shorter, or longer, depending on what it is? And so Ultimately, it's really just sitting, again, this word clarity. I'm telling you, man, like this is the most important thing in your life. Get crystal fucking clear about everything. Because if not, think about this. And I know I'm going long-winded on this answer, but it's important. If I told you to drive from New York to LA and you had no roadmap, no GPS, no street signs, nothing, there's no way you would make it. And that's how most people are operating in life. They have no direction, no clarity. They're not moving towards something. I know exactly what I'm doing every single day. I know my goals, not only for 2022, but for every moment of my life, and also my big life goals. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm always operating through this scope of, am I moving through life in that way, showing up for myself to go and accomplish my life's mission? And I have to be selfish to do that.
Well, I love the answer. Two things. I don't love country music. So you're cool there, bro. And the other thing that you said, I'm not going to bend who I am for you. My wife, it drives her crazy, but that is being true to who you are. That doesn't mean there's not compromise in the world. That just means, look, if it's against my values, and there's certain people I won't hang out with. And if they're listening, if I'm not going to dinner, that's why. But it drives her crazy. But I had to learn that myself, brother. I got to ask you, because there's a question in here that I'm just so curious on the answer, which is, what does it mean to get out of the vortex? So obviously we got the Matrix. You see the movie and people talk about the red pill, blue pill. Is that what we're talking about with the vortex? Tell me what that means.
No. So the vortex is this. It's that darkness inside of you. It's that place in which you're not showing up. It's that place in which you're belittling yourself. You know, JM, you talk to yourself so mean and so unkind that if you said that to me, I'd punch you in the face. And you're expecting to be successful in life, right? That's what the vortex is recognizing this. And in that, understanding that getting out of it is about a shift in mindset. And people always say mindset. It's fucking, everybody throws that fucking word around right now. It drives me crazy. But nobody tells you what mindset is. So in front of me, there's a sign. You can't see it. It says mindset is everything. Dude, I mean that to my core. But let me tell you what mindset is, because it's going to matter. Mindset is this: what you think becomes what you speak become your actions, and your actions become your reality. And so if you're sitting here because you've been so embedded in it your entire life and saying to yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not capable enough, I don't deserve a great relationship, I don't deserve success in business, I deserve to be in debt, I'm a piece of shit, I'm a loser, everyone hates me. Guess what? You're going to act that way. And then that's going to be your fucking reality. And so what I always teach people is this: if you take a pen, this thing right here, the most important thing in your whole arsenal of tools, and you write this down and you convince yourself of this to be true, your life will be different. And it's this: I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. I am the kind of person who is kind to myself. Because in the moments of your day in and day out, as you go through the chaos of this human existence, if you operate through a scope of kindness for yourself, you will ask yourself, what would a person who is kind do right now in this situation? Would they show up for themselves? Would they not have the drink? Would they leave the relationship? Would they quit the job? Would they go community service? What would they do? You're holding yourself accountable to bullshit right now. You're holding yourself accountable to the fucking game, to Sundays watching football, to Tuesday afternoons at happy hour, to not showing up in your life because you're not being kind to yourself, and you're blaming the world and you're expecting everything to be different, but you're not putting in the effort because you're scared of reality. And the reality is this: that you can have what you want. This ain't the secret. There ain't no Disney moments. Nobody's coming to save your ass. You're going to have to put in some work, But I promise you this, if you operate through kindness, you will do the things. This morning, I did not want to work out, JM. And I know that's the easy one, right? Because it is. But I said to myself, what do I need to do to have the life that I want to have? And if I were a kind person myself, what would I do? I would go and work out. And so I got up and I went and I did it. Because I'm not that guy who's like, gym shoes by the door, I'm going to go run fucking 5 miles when I wake up. Nope. Them gym shoes might be there till 4:00 in the afternoon, but at some point I'm going because I made a decision. And so you have to decide and you have to commit. And if you want to get out of the vortex, it starts with kindness.
Man, I always had on, it was my reminders, and I always had one that said, your inner dialogue is a jerk, be kind to yourself. And my wife never understood what that meant, because she's like, I don't talk to myself the way you do. For me, I have, and it's something that I've had to work through. The mindset thing is interesting because you're right. I use the word mindset. I'm a mindset coach is what I do, but I understand what you're saying. Like it is more, your words your thoughts become your words become your actions. That whole thing. I think Lao Tzu is the one that said it a long time ago. I love that quote, and it is so true. Brother, I could go on for literally days talking to you, but I want to give you the opportunity to kind of wrap this thing up. Anything I didn't ask you that you're like, damn it, I got to say this to the audience, because you got so much to give, man. You have led so much life, and you're going to continue to give. I want you to give the audience whatever you want. Open forum.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is just recognizing like the truth of reality. Like it's right here. It's fucking waiting for you. All your dreams, all your ambitions, everything that you want, it's right here. Are you going to take it or not?
And you can go ahead and drop the mic right there. I mean, it's succinct, it's concise, and it's clear as can be. Brother, I appreciate it. That you're an amazing guest. You have so many amazing stories. If people wanted to connect with you online, find out more about Thinking Unbroken, everything that you're doing, where can they find you?
Yeah, man. I'm everywhere on social at Michael Unbroken. But the best thing to do is just check out the Think Unbroken podcast. You can go to thinkunbrokenpodcast.com or just search Think Unbroken on iTunes or Spotify and everywhere. And we've had amazing guests like JM on the show. And so come and listen.
Brother, keep doing what you do. The world needs more of it. I mean, your story is incredible. And I know you got a big 365 podcasts. So guys, this is one of those 364 more out there where you can hear more of Michael. Brother, I appreciate you and you showing up the way you do.
Yeah, brother, you take care of yourself. And thank you so much. It means the world to me to be here with you today.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. You guys. Obviously, there's a lot to digest in that. And again, I have so many more questions I want to ask, but I want to respect your time as well. I hope you guys get up, go win the day every single day. And your mindset does matter. Go back to how he said it and remind yourself your thoughts are so important. Be kind to yourself. Appreciate all you guys. We will talk to you next week. Have a great one. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.